Hello everyone. So today we are going to learn The Winter Lakes written by Wilfred Campbell. So let us first start with the introduction of the poet. Wilfred Campbell was the Canadian poet. He was born on 1 June 1860 in Berlin, Ontario. He is often considered as the Confederation poet, and by the end of the 19th century, he was considered as an unofficial poet laureate of Canada. He was the person of national historic significance in 1938. So, now let us start with the introduction about the poem. So, this Winter Lake had been published in the collected poem of Wilfred Campbell in 1905. The poem sets in a pessimistic tone. Pessimistic tone means there is something negative in the poem. Everything regarding the poem indicates the negativity, dullness, and death. In this poem, death and hate plays the major role. And this is the sixth stanza poem, contains 4 lines each. Now, let us know the summary and the analysis of the poem. This is a philosophical poem depicting loss, death, fear, and all the pessimistic terms, means the negative terms. In this poem, the place which has been comparing the death, loneliness, fear, ghost is northern Canada. Geographically, it has been proven that northern part of the Canada is fully frozen during winters. That is why the poet compares land with desert. For instance, I'm quoting the line from the text: waste of desolate woods, desert of water and shore. Why there is a desert of water and shore? This is because in the winters everything got frozen and there is no shores, there is no water available on the northern part of the Canada. From the beginning of the poem, poet shows the highly pessimistic tone and start with the description of world of death in the form of winter lakes. Here the winter lake symbolizes sadness and fear. So there is the presence of a symbol. The title itself is a symbol which symbolizes the sadness and fear. Poet says, towards the north, the great lakes lies under the sun, moon, dusk, glimmering stars and dying sunset. According to the poet, the death is inevitable and it is present everywhere under the sun and the moon. In these lines, it has been mentioned clearly. Out in a world of death, far is a northward line, under the sun and the moon, under the dusk and the day. So poet is telling here that death is inevitable and it is present everywhere. Either it is under the sun, under the moon, under the day, or everywhere. From the next stanza, poet describes the lake is silent and dull and is lacking bud of spring, laugh of summer, and dream of love song of bird. As the lake is dull, poet explains the dull and useless life without happiness and peace. Even the chill and the dumb wind of ice expresses the hidden grief. Poet describes in the poem that in the sunset the atmosphere looks gloomy, which resembles the darkness of life. So poet also compares the shores of lake with ghost. He says, in the gloomy sunset, the shoring of lake appears like ghosts, which are threatening the normal human life with huge thunder, like problems to be faced. Poe depicts that in this region, which he compared with world of winter and deathland covered with ice in winter and desert without water. Those who come here loses his life forever. The poet describes that sadness and depression occurs in life of human which make them lose their life forever as they are not able to recover from it. Poet is also pointing here that death is everywhere, and without water it is it is very difficult to survive, so that those who comes in the deserted land here, he can lose his life forever. So from the next line, it is here that it is clear that once a person divert his life with full of trouble in front of him as ghost taking him to the path of destructions. The appearance of troubled life is like the water what lie white, like a haunting ghost which stretches miles and miles in the lake. The poet is clearly describing the death and hate in the rocks, hidden bays, moonlit, ice-rimmed, wind-fringed with the forest and crag, shadowy shores and all haunt places. The poet is uh, comparing the death with all these pessimistic words present here in the poem. Even though human is striking hard to lead a life in his world, he is aware that he has to face death. But the conscious human is scared of it, which is the ultimate reality and the final destination of human life. So the poet commands that the external struggle of man is compared with death and hate, which is roaring, harsh, and sand and slow, sand and land. So poet is telling that either it is sand, land, or anywhere, death is inevitable. It is there present, and we have to face the reality. So the major themes of the poem is the geography of Canada, death, hate, um, and nature. Of course, nature, because poet is comparing death with a lot of natural surrounding uh, things, and here and everything which is negative. Poet is describing everything which is negative with it is he's connecting it with uh, death. For instance, human life, he's connecting it with the northern part of Canada, its geography, and in a whole sense he is telling about the death. So it is all about this. Now the major symbols which has been used in the poem: the first symbol is a spectre, which means ghost. Winter Lakes itself is describing or symbolizing the sadness and fear, which I told you earlier. The seasons, the mentioning of season in the poem, like winter symbolizes death, whereas summer, uh, summer is symbolizing the life, because in the northern part of Canada, in the winter everything got frozen. There is no shoring of water, there is no water, everything is covered with ice, and there is a full of white desert present there. But in summers there is a bit of cold, there is everything normal. So the normal thing is life, and which is the harsh conditions, the pessimistic, the negative things are death. So uh, the line that surf that shoreward thunder means scorching a fear of death to humans. So there is all those symbols present in the poem. The poetic devices which has been used in the poem are personification, in the lines like lonely hidden bays. Here, poet is comparing the bays with lonely hidden, which always is compared with man. Like man is always lonely, and not always, of course. Man can be lonely. So here, the poet is comparing it with nature and a human act or something which is living. So lonely hidden bays. The second is death and hate on the rocks. So death is mainly been served by death. Uh, Death is experienced by living beings. Hate is also being experienced by living beings, but the rocks are non-living. So death and hate are personified in the sense with the rock. The presence of simile, ghost like shores. So like what symbolizes that it is a simile. Alliteration, when and waste and white. So in these lines we come to know that W and W, here is a presence of alliteration, and this poem is a lyric poem. Here is all that about the poem. So the Winter Lake, which has been the very prominent poem of Canadian writer Wilfred Campbell.